Hey, songwriters, welcome back to another edition here at Home Songwriting. I am so thrilled that you have chosen to join me for another video. Today, we're going to be talking about songwriting essentials. What I wanted to do is take you through some of the things that you should be thinking about in every single song that you write, because I wanted to talk to you about how professional songwriters really have systems and ways that they think about songwriting so they can write on a more consistent basis. So I understand that you may not look to write songs as a professional, you might not have that goal. But I think the more we can sort of use tips from professionals, it can make your at-home songwriting even better. So even if you're not looking to chase this as a dream of making money with it, maybe you just want to write better songs, let's still take a look at what the professionals do, because I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to write more professionally and also maintain some of the habits that some of the professional writers have. So welcome to this video, Songwriting Essentials. If you like it, hit subscribe. And if you like what we're doing here, definitely join our meetup group where we do live free online workshops live where you can interact with me and other songwriters. Check out the link in the description. But let's jump in to what we're going to do today. So what are we covering? So we're going to cover quite a bit in this video. So what are we covering? We're going to talk about how songwriters can write consistently. We're going to talk about 5 elements that really make up songs when you're writing songs at home. Also, types of lyrics. There's a couple of types of lyrics that if you know these lyric types, you can really write stronger songs that your listeners experience in a different way. We also are going to talk about 2 different kinds of song sections. We're also going to talk about a writing example. I'm going to show you how I wrote one of my songs, and I'm going to share the song with you as well. And then also, we're going to talk about song outlines, because I think this is something that can help you write more efficiently and keep you on track and just write better songs overall. So, professional songwriters, what do they do different? When I think about a professional songwriter, I think about someone who's like a consistent writer, writes a lot, treats it like it's a job, whether or not they're making money on it or not. They treat it like a job. They treat it with a lot of respect. They make appointments. They want to really focus on their craft. So professional songwriters, they're really writing 1 or 2 songs per day. I know some of you out there are saying, holy crap, I can't even like write a few words in a day, let alone 1 or 2 songs. But see, that's where these professionals, where we can learn from them, because I know sometimes life gets in the way and you don't have a whole lot of time. So what are some of the systems you can use to write more songs? Also, professional writers, they really can't afford to sit around and wait for inspiration. So those of you who wait for that inspiration bug to strike before you actually start writing, professionals can't really do that. They have to rely on the craft to write their songs. Also, professional writers a lot of times can write on command. If they get a call from a client or possibly an artist and they say, we need a song about XYZ, they have to be able to really use their craft and their know-how to be able to come up with something in a very short notice. So not a bad skill to develop. Also, professional writers also understand that the more you write, the better the chance of landing on a great song. Professionals don't sit and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite every single song. They only rewrite the top songs that seem to have the most potential. So if you're not writing very many songs, more than likely you're not working on your top-notch songs, because you just need more to fill that bucket. Also, professional songwriters use systems to be more efficient, and they actually finish songs. I think that's something that you really should focus on, is finishing what you're starting. And I know sometimes it's painful, but just finish it anyway and just get it done, because you want to train yourself to actually finish things and not just start, because the starting and not finishing is a common songwriting disease. Also, professional writers don't just focus on topics. They think about the emotions that they want to deliver underneath those topics. And how does the emotion carry the topic? And I'm going to show you some ideas on how you can think about that. Also, professional writers know that great songs also start with the best ideas. So sometimes an idea isn't really worthy of a full song. Sometimes an idea is really just part of a song. So professionals have developed ways to see, can I actually develop a full song out of my nugget or out of my, little thing, or I would say like little chunk of an idea that I have. So those are some things that to think about when you compare yourself to a professional writer. And Pat Pattison, who a lot of you are familiar with, I teach one of Pat's courses for Berkeley Online. Pat says 90% of what you write is not your best 10%. And what you should take from this line is that no matter who you are, most of what you write is not going to be your best. So don't worry about perfection all the time, because there's only a small percentage of songs that are even going to be worthy of the time and effort to keep rewriting it. So if you're writing one song a year, that song, there's like a 90% chance that that's not your best song. So it's better to write more than to keep working the same songs. And quality in songwriting is really reached through quantity of songs written. The songwriters who write more songs are almost always better than the songwriters that only write a few songs and focus heavily on those few. And the reason is the more you write, the more lessons you learn, and the more things you learn not to do. So again, quality in songwriting is reached through quantity of your songs written. So I would encourage you to finish more songs, write more songs. Songwriting is all about communication. As songwriters, we are communicators. And songwriting communicates emotions, it communicates ideas, and it communicates stories, or a combination of all three. And songwriting is really a lot like journalism. We're reporting on events and feelings around those events. And really, your singer is the storyteller, the narrator of those events. So, what are the elements then that actually make up songs? So there's really 4 that don't include production, but if you include production, and I'm including it because a lot of you are music producers and a lot of you are recording your own songs, and the concept we're going to talk about with all of these elements applies to everything you see on your screen right now. So songs are made up of lyrics, they're made up of melody, they're made up of harmony, songs have groove, and then you also have, if you're recording your songs, you have that production element as well. So not every song is going to focus on every element in equal measure. So what do I mean by that? Well, a dance song or an electronic song or an EDM song is going to really focus on melody, groove, and production more so than I would say the lyrical side. Whereas like a singer-songwriter song, where it's a singer and maybe an acoustic guitar or a piano, that's going to probably focus more on the lyrics, the melody, and the harmony, where the groove and the production takes a backseat. So what I want you to think about as you write your song is think about the genre, think about the style, and think about how do you want these elements to all work together. And you don't have to have all of them front and center in every song. In fact, it's good to decide what is going to be the centerpiece of your song, so you're not focused on things that aren't going to make a difference. Also, these elements of your song are the tools that you have to communicate emotion. So there's ways that you can communicate emotion through lyrics, you can communicate emotion through melody, you can create emotion through harmony, the groove can communicate emotion, and your production can also communicate emotion. So thinking about how you use these elements should always come from the perspective of how am I using this tool to support the message and the emotion of what I'm trying to say. And This concept comes down to the thought of prosody. So, prosody is how the structure relates to or amplifies the message of your content. So, more simply, it's really how the lyrics and music work together to deliver a specific emotion. And how you use each of the elements we just talked about will depend on the emotions that you're trying to deliver, because you want to make sure that you are communicating in a way that your listener feels what you're trying to make them feel. And the goal is to use that structure to deliver the intended emotion. Sometimes if you are not thinking about emotion in the elements, you're still making decisions that might be actually taking away from what you're trying to say. So it's better to make conscious decisions than to just do things sort of on autopilot. So going back to kind of this concept about songwriting and professional songwriters, songwriting really is some mix of inspiration and know-how, right? So inspiration is great when it strikes. But if you're writing a lot of songs and if you're writing on a more professional, consistent basis, you're going to sort of exhaust your inspiration bucket at some point. So when that happens, you have to rely on your know-how. So inspiration's great, but you can't write songs unless you know the craft and to know what to do with that inspiration. And sometimes inspiration has a sick day. Inspiration doesn't show up, right? So when that happens, you have to rely 100% on your know-how, and you have to rely on the fact that you just know how to write a song even when you're not feeling inspired. So I like to say that doing the work and working the craft can bring inspiration, or another way I like to say it is perspiration leads to inspiration, and use the craft when the muse isn't showing up. I saw an interview with Taylor Swift where she said that, the craft of songwriting is what she has to rely on when the muse isn't there, the inspiration isn't there, and it's one of those days where it's just you have to do the work. So now moving on to the two types of song section. At the beginning of this, I told you that we're going to talk about two types of song sections. We're going to dive deeper into what each of these sections do from a job perspective or from a function perspective. But first off, the two types of song sections are developmental and central or summarizing. So your developmental types of song sections, those include verses, pre-chorus, and bridge. Those sections are giving information that is developing the song to lead to the central parts of the song. And then the central parts of the song are the chorus. The bridge can also be central, and the bridge can also summarize. And then sometimes there's a post-chorus that also has kind of a central summarizing function where it's almost like another hook. It's also kind of summarizing what your chorus is saying, because I like to think of the chorus as sort of the thesis statement. It's what the song is about. Everything else is like evidence supporting your chorus. So now there's two types of song sections, but there's also two types of lyrics as well. So what are the types of lyrics that we are talking about here? Well, first off is showing language. Second is telling. But showing, that is the sense-based, concrete facts. It's outside of the characters. It's external details that you can see, hear, taste, smell, touch. It has physical movement. It might cause physical body feelings like being nauseous, dizzy, pain, and like those types of things. That could be showing language. So that's sense-based. It's concrete. You can feel it, experience it. Then the other type of lyric is your telling lyric. Telling is emotional, it's feelings, it's more abstract. It's what's happening on the inside of the characters that really can't be experienced through the five senses. Not to say that people don't feel these things, but it's not easily described through the five senses. So, one way that you can pull your listener, and the most important way that you can pull your listener into your song, is using a mix of showing language and telling language. And what I mean by that is you have to set the scene and show us the situation before you give us the emotion. Because if you give us the emotion first, we have no context to understand why you're feeling that or why we should feel that as listeners. So the big rule here is show before you tell. Show before you tell. Give us the facts before you give us the feelings, right? And this is a way to think about your songs. A trick that I use sometimes is do 2 or 3 lines of concrete showing language and then 1 or 2 lines of telling language. Set the scene and then tell us the emotion behind it. It's more powerful than if you give us the emotion and then set the scene, because information in songs runs down, it doesn't run back up. So if you give us information that we don't understand where it fits too early in your song, it won't make sense, and we'll start to think as listeners. And the worst thing you can do as a songwriter is to make your listener think. You don't want them to think, you want them to feel through your song. So the rule here, and again, there's no rules, but this is a pretty powerful tool: show before you tell. Build the house where the emotion lives. So set the scene, give us some furniture, and then put the emotion into that scene. So now let's talk about what each verse is doing, or what each song section, I should say, is doing in each of your songs. So first off, verse 1. Verse 1 is the very first time that you're giving any information to your listener. If they're starting your song from the beginning, the first time they've heard it, they've never heard any motifs melodically. They've never heard any lyrics. They have no idea what your chorus is. They have no idea what you're trying to say. This is your first opportunity to set the scene. It's like the time when the lights come up in the theater when you're watching a play or a musical, and the lights go down and everybody's waiting in anticipation, and then the lights come back on and you see the set for the first time, and you see the characters for the first time, and you get a sense of, okay, what is this play going to be about? Well, that's really what your first verse is doing. Your first verse is establishing the who, so that's who's singing, who are they singing to, who is in the story. It tells you when it's happening, it tells you where it's happening, and it gives you the first glimpse of sort of what is going on, or at least 2 of the 4 of those. So your first verse establishes your who, when, where, and possibly what. Also, the first verse usually does more showing with descriptive language. So your first verse is going to have more facts and concrete details because you're setting that scene. And also, the verses are going to have a little bit more conversational language because everything is a little bit more concrete. You're really setting the story and telling the story that's going to lead to the big chorus or the big refrain of what your song is about. And when I say refrain, refrain is not just another word for chorus. A refrain really is kind of a line that includes your title and your hook on the end of a verse. So if you don't have a chorus, you can definitely have a verse refrain type of a song, which there's other videos here on the channel that talk a little bit about that. But verses usually have more conversational language. Usually verses are somewhere between 4 and 6 lines. I would say maybe 3 and 8 lines is kind of common for commercial type songs. Once you start getting longer, you're probably doing something wrong, or you're not really whittling down the information to the need to know stuff. So I usually try to stick to 4 to 6 lines, give or take a couple. And then your first verse is where you first establish patterns and melodic motif. So this is where you start to set patterns that you can either meet with your listeners, or you can also have patterns where you sort of give them a surprise or you don't meet their expectations. You can use that as a tool. But this is the very first time where you establish any sort of pattern in your songs or any motif in your songs. So now we talked about verse 1. Now let's move on to your chorus. So chorus is the part of the song that really means everybody sing, right? The chorus is the part where people sing along. The chorus is the part where it's really summarizing the song. It's what it's about. And it's usually more emotional and easier to sing. The idea of chorus comes from Greek theater, where in the theater you would have a scene where actors would act it out, but then a chorus would really like sing about what they had just seen and sort of judge the verse that just happened or the scene that just happened. So that's kind of the concept of a chorus, but in popular music and commercial music, your chorus is really the centerpiece where your hook lives within the song. So it's the emotional center of the song is what I like to say. It's really what the song is about. It's the why of the song. And when I say the why, that means, why did you just tell me all of this information in the verse? The chorus explains why we just said all of that. The chorus is the big punchline. It's the boom, there it is. This is why we're here, right? That's the why of the song. The chorus is the main idea. That's another way to think about it. It's also the point or the overall lesson of the song, right? It's the moral of the story. That's the chorus. The chorus has more emotional language usually because it's more of that emotional center. So you usually don't have quite as much showing language, although you can. Some songs still show and have concrete details and a lot of images. But a lot of times the chorus is more emotional. It doesn't have as much showing language. It's definitely more telling. So a lot of times you can think of show more in the verse, tell in the chorus. It's the part of the song that people sing along to. And again, it's usually somewhere between 4 and 6 lines. Again, maybe like 3 to 8. Sometimes they may double a chorus, so it takes up longer time frame, especially in some dance music. You will do that. But if you're just starting out, don't feel like you have to write too much. 4 to 6 lines will usually do. And the most important thing here, I think, is it should contrast the verses. It should sound different than your verses. One of the goals as a songwriter is you really want to establish this tension and release concept. A lot of times you'll be creating tension in your verses and releasing it in the chorus. And that is that contrast. So make the sections different. Contrast the lyrics, contrast the melody, contrast the harmony, contrast the groove, contrast the production. Keep your listener on this tension and release journey so they stay interested in your song. Your songs will get boring if they lack contrast. So now you have your first verse and your chorus. Let's move on to verse 2. This is the curse of the second verse. This is where a lot of people say, I don't know what to write. I don't know how to say something new. So you end up saying exactly the same thing that you said in the first verse, but you say it with different words. And that's a surefire way to also bore the crap out of your listener by saying the same thing just in different words. Your listener knows you're just saying the same thing. They've got it. They understand it. So this is where you need to advance your information and advance the story. So the verse 2 goes deeper into the topic of your song. You've already set the stage. You've already given people what the main message of your song is. Now it's time to go further, go deeper. So your verse 2 will advance or expand on the who, the when, the where, and the what. So it advances those 4 things, or as many as you can. It expands the topic. And it also can be more telling than verse 1 because you've done a lot of showing. Verse 2 can be a little bit more emotional and really focus on, giving us more emotional details and feelings because we already know where we're at. Also, your verse 2 has a job to do. It really should help the chorus mean more the second time you hear it. So, part of the energy and part of the excitement of really good songs is even though we're hearing the same chorus over and over again, it feels like it gains energy, it gains weight every time we hear it. And that's because the verses have that job to do. It's the verses' job to lift that chorus and make it mean more when we hear it each time. Again, verse 2 goes back to more conversational language. And again, usually 4 to 6 lines, give or take a few lines there. So, how do you advance the who, the when, the where, and the what? Oh, and also I should mention the verse 2 usually matches verse 1 pretty closely melodically. So it sounds like you're in a verse. So when you're advancing the who, the when, and the where, you can focus on the who, when, where. You can also use some other storytelling tools to really advance the concept. For instance, the who, you could maybe talk about another person in the first verse. You could talk about yourself in the second verse. And then in the bridge or the third verse, you could then talk about us, right? So the you, me, us. So think about how you can change the who, advance the who, change the perspective or the point of view or the vantage point. Also, think about how you can focus on the when. So is it past, present, future? And you don't have to have any of these in these orders. You can move them around. So for instance, your song might start in the future where you're current day, but you're thinking about how you want things to be in the future in your first verse. And then maybe in the second verse, you go to the past. And then in the bridge or the third verse, you really go to the present. So just figure out a way that you can change that perspective, that vantage point a little bit from verse 1 to verse 2 to verse 3 or the bridge. You can do that with locations. So you could have location 1, location 2, location 3. Another way that I like to write as well is situation, conflict, resolution. So first verse, here's the deal, here's what's going on. The second verse, but these other things are happening, so there's a conflict. And then the third verse or the bridge can be like, here's what I'm going to do about it. So here's the resolution, or this is what's going to go down. So that's another way to advance that who, when, where, to move your listener through the story arc. So now let's talk about the bridge. So when you think of a bridge, what do bridges do, right? They take you somewhere. So in a song, a bridge takes you somewhere new. The key word for bridges here is it contrasts the other sections. So bridges are the chance for you to give your listener something they haven't heard before. They've heard the verses a couple of times. They've heard the chorus a couple of times. Now it's time for something new to come into play and really give your listeners that break from what they've already heard. The bridge also usually contrasts a melody, a chord, groove, every element that you can. Usually it's a good idea to contrast in the bridge. It can also expand on the who, the when, and the where, like we just talked about. Also, it can answer what now? What does the future look like? What happens next? Where do we go from here? Type of questions. It takes the listener somewhere new. Just like a physical bridge, it takes you somewhere. And it can sometimes act like a contrasted third verse. So sometimes bridges still are giving information. Sometimes they're more summarizing. It's really up to you, but the key word here is contrast. So that's a look at the song sections. Let's now take a look at how you can mine for content. So, at the beginning of this, I talked about how do you write when you really don't have inspiration? Well, the good news is I'm going to show you a technique that I used to write one of my songs, and it's a technique you can use to write some of your songs as well. It takes a little practice. So, but practice is good. It gives you something to work on. So One of the ways that I like to start songs is by sense-based free writing, or what Pat Pattison would call object writing. If you're not familiar with object writing and you want to learn more, definitely get Pat Pattison's books, Writing Better Lyrics and Songwriting Without Boundaries. They are great practice tools. They have great information. But the idea here is use your senses to write about an object, a person, a place, or a time. That's either a thing, a who, a when, or a where, right? And write about it for 5 minutes, focusing on each of your senses. And the senses are sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, and movement. So during that 5 minutes, you're going to describe whatever you're writing about with those senses. Now, you are not writing lyrics, so you do not edit, you do not think about what you're writing. If something comes to mind, it goes from your brain to your page, right? If it pops in your head, if you think it, you write it. Don't rhyme, don't stop writing, just try to keep going, because the second you start rhyming, the second you start editing, you're not flowing anymore. You're just now bringing in the critic, which invites writer's block, which we don't want that. And again, the goal here is to try to write from each of your senses. So I wanted to show you an example of some object writing that I did. So I pulled a random word a couple of years ago. My word was strawberries. And this is what I wrote in 5 minutes. I wrote, just outside of town by the airport, there's a field where you can pick your own strawberries. You can see the airport off to the left. There's a gravel road on one side and an oil highway on the other. There's a sign that says pick your own. The best time to go is just as the sun is going down. Shadows from the shelter belt loom over rows of green plants with dashes of red. The air smells like summer, that mix of plants, dust, and humidity. You can smell the tar from the road and the exhaust from the cars that go by now and then. We grab some baskets and start out inspecting the rows for the biggest, reddest, and juiciest strawberries. There are grasshoppers and flies that move around us. We pick the berries and plop them into our basket. Your smile was a mirror reflecting the setting sun. It was like that flash was in slow motion, and it took my breath away. Those eyes smiling. So that was my 5 minutes. That was my strawberries object write. So as you can see, I tried to hit on as many senses as I could, from sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, movement, right? So it really kind of paints that picture. That's your goal, is to just free write what comes to mind. If you're experiencing it in that movie in your head, put it on the page. So then what do you do with this once you have that written? Well, it's a good practice to do this just to sort of get your mind working. But if you want to use the material, some of the things that you can do after free writing is scan what you wrote for interesting lines. You can scan what you've written for titles. You can look for possible metaphors or song ideas that are hiding in what you have just written. And you can write down words and lines that rhyme with each other. So you can start to create a rhyme palette based on what you have just free written. You can also create a palette to choose more material from. I'm going to show you an example of a song that I wrote. So I'm going to jump over here. So this is the actual page, the Google Doc where I wrote this song. So here's what I had just read to you. But what I did was I pulled out external details, meaning showing language, and I made lines, because this makes the best verse material, right? Because we said verses show. And I learned some of this technique from Andrea Stolpe. Some of you may know Andrea. She's been a teacher and a mentor of mine for a while. But I pulled out the external details and made a list of lines that I thought would be possible song lyrics, right? So then I thought, well, what could an emotion be about this situation? So I have my details. So far, I haven't started thinking about writing a song yet. I'm just making a list of possible lines that might make song material. So then, once I kind of knew what those pictures were, I decided what could be the emotion, or what are some of the things that someone could be feeling about this picture. So then I decided, well, what if it was writing about summers of the past? What if the song was about nostalgia? So what if the song was really about like thinking back and wishing that you were in that place? So then I did another 5 minutes, but this time instead of writing about senses, I wrote from feelings. And this is where I was writing to try to get chorus material. Do you see what I'm doing here? I did showing language, I did the sense-based writing, and then I did the feelings and the telling-based free writing to create material for a chorus. So here's what I wrote for the chorus material. I wrote, love the summers of the past. I love those summers back when we used to go fishing and Grandpa still had that old Buick. We would load up in the car and head out of town. Man, I wish Grandpa was still here. I wish we had all of the time we did back then when time seemed to go slower. Summer seemed to last a lifetime. My heart keeps seeing these flashbacks of the sun shining on our smiles, golden moments that are captured somewhere that matters. We can't go back and that is sad, but man, did we have some happy times. There's that feeling that never got old, but it's harder to find. Smiles like mirrors reflecting the setting sun, rays of golden light. So then I went through and I looked for potential song titles or ideas that could be song titles, which then I pulled out those summers, I pulled out used to go fishing, I pulled out old Buick, load up the car, head out of town, I wish Grandpa was still here, and then I also had riding lawnmower, which I thought could possibly be a great title. So those were the kind of ideas where I started. So the next step in the process was to really make a song outline, right? To really determine what am I going to say in each song section. And this is something that you should be doing and something you should practice, because I think it helps keep you on track and it helps you write just more focused and better songs. So first off, what is the topic and the emotion? I believe that your song should be about one topic, one emotion. It should be easily explained in 1 or 2 sentences. My song was feeling of nostalgia for summers of the past. In my verse 1, I decided I was going to describe a strawberry field where we used to go. It would be focused in the past, and it would be the who would be we. I'd be talking about me and who I used to hang out with. And then the chorus is, oh, I should say I picked those summers as the title. So the chorus was, I want to go back to those summers. So I described the strawberry fields where we used to go. I want to go back. Verse 2 was recalling another memory from a summer gone by. This time it's in the past, but it's more me focused. So I'm advancing, I'm changing the who. So it went from we to me. So another memory, I want to go back to those summers. The bridge then pulls us into the present, and it talks about Grandpa. So it says, now the field is condos and things aren't the same. Taking us to the chorus, I want to go back to those summers. So do you see how the outline actually feels like you're developing this title? You're actually sort of recoloring it and making it mean something different each time you hear it. So strawberry fields, I want to go back. I had this other memory, I want to go back. Now the field is condos and things aren't the same. I want to go back. So outlining the song before you actually write lyrics can help keep you on track as you write your songs. So now I wanted to show you what the song actually became. So this is the song that I wrote. It started as a random word, strawberries. And this is the song that came out called Those Summers. there's a place where the shadow of a shelter belt hangs over fields of strawberries, where a homemade sign says pick your own. It's where we played in the hazy days of August, chasing shade with the dust and grasshoppers of retreat off a gravel road. Sweet nectar of memories, it flows in my mind. I wanna go back, I wanna go back again. Back to those summers, picking berries in the country. Those summers, mowing grass and making money. Man, I wish Grandpa could take us on his boat. If I had a time machine, it's the first place I go. To those summers, those summers. The county fair, on the midway, playing games on my first date. Man, I was so nervous, but I tossed those rings till I won the prize. And then we walked home under the cottonwoods that night. Like Hollywood had written it, I had the first kiss of my life. Sweet nectar of memories, it flows in my mind. I wanna go back, I wanna go back again. Back to those summers, picking berries in the country. Those summers, mowing grass and making money. Man, I wish Grandpa could take us on his boat. If I had a time machine, it's the first place I go. To those summers, those summers. Now condos were built where the strawberries grew, and Grandpa's been gone since July of '02, and none of the seasons feel like they used to. No, not like those summers, picking berries in the country. Those summers, mowing grass and making money. And man, I wish Grandpa could take us on his boat. If I had a time machine, it's the first place I go. To those summers, those summers. And there's a place where the shadow of a shelter belt hangs over fields of strawberries, where a homemade sign says pick your own. All right, so that is the demo of the song that ended up being called Those Summers. And that was the song that started just from the free write of Strawberries. So hopefully you took notes. Hopefully you can go back and rewatch this video and see sort of that process that I used to get material, also to outline the song. And then it became just a matter of fitting some of the material into song structure, having it fit to the melodic structure that I had come up with. And the song ended up being Those Summers. So that's really what I have for you in today's video. If you find this helpful, please subscribe to the channel. Would love to have you join the meetup groups as well. And there's other videos here on the channel that I think you will find very helpful. So if you're looking for lyric writing information, if you're looking for interviews with other songwriters, if you're looking for just ways that you can improve your craft, at-home songwriting is just for you. So my name's Chad Shank. Appreciate you hanging out with me for a while here today. Hopefully I'll see you again on some of the videos and in some of the workshops. Yeah, so join the community at homesongwritingcourses.com. But let's roll on to this next video where you can get some more great tips on the craft, and we'll see you soon.